Hello, I'm Professor Susan DeGise. This tutorial is on practice 9.9b. Directions. In measures 5 through 8, transpose the second voice or answer above the first voice or subject by a perfect fifth. The answer begins on the downbeat of measure 5, and downbeats have been given to you as a guide. The subject begins here with the stems that point down. The answer begins here, and its stems will always point up. So notice the first note here is D4, and the first note of the answer is A4, which is a perfect fifth higher. So for this, what you're going to do is you're going to rewrite every note from the subject into the answer. So I'll go ahead and do the next note. The next note here is F4. A perfect fifth above F4 is C5, so I'm going to write a C5 here as a half note. This F4 is tied, so I'm going to tie my C5, and notice that there's already a C5 on the downbeat of the next measure. The downbeats have been given to you for this exercise. So you can either use method number 2, which is what I did there. I rewrote the note a perfect fifth higher, or method number 1, which is where you identify the intervals between notes. As I go through this, I'm going to use both methods. I usually like to use method number 1 with smaller intervals, especially stepwise motion or a skip of a third, and I'll save method number 2 for larger intervals. Go ahead and try this on your own. Pause the video and press play when you're ready. Alright, so from this F, the music goes down by half step to E. So I'm going to move this C down by half step to B. Now this is a pretty big jump. So what I might do now is think of a perfect fifth above A, which is E. So my answer will go up to E. The music moves down by a whole step, and then a half step. So I'm going to move this note E down by a step, and then down by a half step, which is C sharp, and then that shows me I'm on track. So do you see how I'm using a combination of methods? For this note here, I just wrote a perfect fifth above. For this note here, I wrote a perfect fifth above. But for everything else that was stepwise, I used method number 1, where I just figured out if it was a major second or minor second and applied it to the answer. All right, here I have a bunch of stepwise motion. So I have a half step, whole step, half step, and half step. So let me go ahead and add that. So a half step above C sharp is D. A whole step above D is E. A half step above E is F. A half step down from F is E. And a half step down from E is D sharp, which is there, so I know I'm on track. Now I'm going to go ahead and copy the rhythm. So I have 2 eighth notes, a quarter note, and a quarter note. Okay, so now I have this big jump here. So it might be easier to just write a perfect fifth above D5. A perfect fifth above D5 is A5, so I'm just going to jump to A5 here. Now you might be tempted to use a stem that points down for this note that's so high, but again, the subject has the stems pointing down, so we're going to save the answer to have all the stems pointing up. From this D5, the music moves down by half step, so I'm going to move this A down by half step, which means it goes to G sharp. From there, I have another pretty big leap, so I'm just going to write a perfect fifth above G4. A perfect fifth above G4 is D5. Now I'm not done, because what I've written here is not D5. This is D sharp 5. So to make it D5, I'm going to have to add a natural sign. Let's listen to this example. Okay, so we used both methods for intervallic transposition for this practice exercise. Sometimes we just wrote everything a perfect fifth above, and other times we looked for the interval between notes. So be sure you understand how to do both methods. You've now completed the tutorial for practice 9.9b. Thank you for watching.